Good morning, guys. I hope you're well. I'm on the microphone today, so if there is a faint buzzing, because there was last time I used this, then apologies. I'll only know once I've uploaded the video, and by that time I'm not going to go back and spend 20 minutes commentating. So if it will happen, then it will only happen once. So we're going to start off today in a prone twist, I guess you could say. So we're trying to twist out the thoracic spine by just lifting one leg up and over, and I'm keeping it dynamic to start off with by doing a couple of reps, trying to almost turn over onto that bottom arm. Feel as though that bottom arm, in this case the left arm, is being pulled from underneath you. Notice I've got that line going down between the shoulder blades. That's because I'm trying to pinch together, and there you see as the hand comes over, I'm just exaggerating that, squeezing that scapula together, opening up the pecs. We're just going to squeeze here for maybe 30 seconds to a minute. It's quite a hard stretch to hold, but the longer you can, the better. If you've been on a long ride and those shoulders have been in that forward position, then they're going to need this. Those pecs are going to be very tight. You can also go through a few contractions where you're trying to push your shoulder down into the floor on your inhale, and when you exhale, completely lose that tension. Just roll a little bit further over onto that arm, open up the chest. Coming back round and moving on to the other side slowly. Just going to create a bit of space here. The eagle-eyed among you will notice that I got my Iron Man tattoo. I've now become that wanker with the Iron Man tattoo. So I think this was right when I just got it done, so it was probably all scabby and healing. Same again for the other side. So first of all, find a nice position. You want to be almost on a good position with that shoulder. So I've got my hand at 90 degrees, and I think here I'm just readjusting that position so that you can feel a stretch on the pec. If you find that your hand is too far down or your shoulder is elevated, you don't really get a nice stretch there, so make sure you take the time. Not really pushing with that left arm that's hinged at the elbow. I'm just using that for support. I'm more trying to focus on retracting the shoulder blades, pinching together, pulling that bottom arm from underneath me. It's like you've got opposing forces. With one side you're trying to rotate over, the other you're trying to pull that arm away so as to create that stretch on the pec. Hand comes up, adds that little squeeze with the scapula. This is the one I find quite hard to hold for long periods. And again, use that breathing. Push down through the shoulder, through the pec on the inhale, and on your exhale, completely relax. Turn into it. Slowly bring it back down and return to that prone position. And we're just going to come into an all fours position now, threading the right arm under the left arm. And again, this is one that takes a little bit of trial and error to get a nice position. Once I've threaded that arm down, my elbow is resting on the floor, the shoulder is just hovering above the floor. Then I start to twist in towards my right hand side. So if you think about it, you're trying to create a big surface area on the back of that right shoulder. By twisting in towards your right, and I'll show you a better angle here as I turn around. So I've dropped my elbow down, the shoulder just hangs, it's not completely on the floor, and then I twist in towards my right. You're creating a large surface area, almost trying to take your line of vision over towards the right, and creating a large surface area on the back of that shoulder blade. Feel like it's ripping off the shoulder almost, or taking the scapula away from the shoulder. This is another one where you can involve some PNF. So on your inhale, you can push down through the shoulder, and on your exhale, just lose that tension, twist into it a little bit more. 30 seconds or so on each little move around after you come out from that. Back to the original position, then left arm threads under the right. Same again. So first of all, get a nice twist. See how far you can reach that arm through. And then twist in towards your left hand side with the body. That line of vision. Feel like you're ripping that scapula off the back. Because that is essentially what that scapula is doing. It is floating your shoulder blade on the back through, a load of fascia, through a load of connective tissue and muscle. It is just sitting on the back. Use your breath to your advantage in that stretch. Hold it for a few more seconds. Really feeling like you're rotating the torso. Before turning up into that original position. Little move around again, keep it nice and dynamic, a few little cat-cows there. And for this next one, I'm going to use a ball of some kind, so that could be a lacrosse ball. I think all I had to hand today was the spiky ball, which, let me tell you, is not fun. I can imagine this type of spiky ball is good at promoting blood flow, or sort of, the sensory receptors wherever you are placing it, but for me, I don't really like it that much. I'm going to place this on the pec, or right on that joint between the pec and the shoulder. You might find that you need to elevate that ball up on a little block or a step, if you've got access to one, so as to get a nice position on here, so that you're really getting into that muscle with enough weight and enough pressure. And as you can see, I've just placed the back of my hand on the small of the back. That's going to internally rotate your shoulder. And personally, that's where I need a little bit of improvement. I know for a lot of the swim catch, you're going to need that internal rotation. So that's probably key for a lot of you as well. You want to mobilize in the position that you're trying to create. So if you're trying to create a better internal rotation, that's how you want to foam roll. That's how you want to get in there with the lacrosse ball. You'll notice as you move your shoulder around, once you've got that ball underneath it, you're going to see or feel the way that shoulder moves and all the muscles that are coming into play when you're on top of it. Switch over to the other side. We're going about a minute or just over on each side. Seeking out those tender spots. Find somewhere that is particularly sore. And again, this goes back to if you've been on a long ride and you've had your shoulders rolled forward, and you haven't got particularly good shoulder internal rotation, then it's going to pull the whole shoulder forward in the socket. And that ball and socket joint, the top of your arm or your humerus, is connected to the shoulder socket, or the glenoid humerus joint. It's going to be pulled right forward in that socket. Might create problems with impingement further down the road, or lead to injury, especially swimming injuries. How common is it, guys? You hear people injuring shoulders while swimming. Well, let me tell you, it's because you don't have the full range of motion in that socket. And further along the line, that becomes less and less and less. until the point where you have an impingement and you try and just almost go for a movement that's out of your range and you trigger something. You know, you might catch a nerve, you might trap the nerve. I see it so often when I'm training people one-to-one, so make sure that doesn't happen to you. Really key one, just to use that myofascial release with the lacrosse ball. All about opening out the shoulders, opening out the chest. With this one in particular, if you take a look, I've got my elbows on the floor. I'm hinging from that 90-degree position with the elbows, and then I'm just coming all the way forward into internal rotation. So I've laid them flat on the floor. My elbows could do with being a little bit higher there, and then I'm internally rotating. So don't make the mistake of letting your shoulders come away from the floor. You'll feel when you're in this starting position here that the backs of your shoulders are in contact, but as you go forward they want to lift. Fight that as best you can, and think about that movement when we go on to this next one that you see here. Think about the backs of those shoulders staying in contact. I'm placing the backs of my hands under the small of my back, lifting up the hips into like a glute bridge, and slowly as those hips go down and I push on my hands with my lower back, you'll feel the shoulders want to come away. Resist it as best you can. Okay, fight it, and this is where you start to feel that internal rotation through the shoulder, what we're talking about today and the main point of this workout. This is a hard one to achieve if you're not really knowing what you're looking for or what feeling you're trying to achieve. But have a trial and error, play around with it, switch over your hands. It's pretty much just what I'm doing here. I'm going one at a time now, feeling on one shoulder. You'll see there. Keep your shoulder down towards the floor. When you do this internal rotation, you might feel, well, why is he getting me to internally rotate my shoulders? He's on about my shoulders rolling forward on the bike, so why do I want to get them to rotate forward even more? You're not. It's a completely different movement. Allowing the joint to rotate in the socket and allowing it to be pulled forward are two completely different things. And if you lack the former, the rotation, then it will be pulled forward even more. If you're not interested in the concept or the sort of mechanics of it, don't worry, just do it. Simple as that. A lot of clients that I teach, I explain the theory and you see their eyes glaze over. So you can, by all means, just listen with the sound or watch with the sound off. I might be just really annoying you first thing in the morning. In which case, listen to this serene backing music that I've got on here. Again, so I'm just spending some time here. We want to spend 2 minutes in passive stretches. That's why I am spending so long on trying to get some internal rotation here, because it is a passive stretch. I'm not really using too much strength, although having said that, I am pinning my shoulders back. Take those shoulders through internal, external rotation again, just by placing those elbows on the floor, taking it through full range of motion. See how much motion you have got now after that little drill there. See if you can go much further, and you'll see for me, I've definitely improved about 10 degrees of motion there without the backs of my shoulders coming away from the floor. And this is kind of like your strength test as well, because you have to use that strength to both keep the elbows flat and to keep the backs of the shoulders flat and to really pin those hands down. Excellent. Sitting up then, guys, having a little shake off with those shoulders if you need to. This time I'm going to use quite a thick band. I'm trying to think of an alternative for this one. You could potentially use just like a heavy kettlebell or semi-heavy kettlebell or dumbbell. But as you can see, I'm trying to get my shoulder into full flexion, and I'm also trying to think about externally rotating the shoulder as well. So I'm thinking about, one, keeping my core engaged as well, because you'll notice my back is flat, it's not arched. I'm not arching back towards the resistance band. It's like if you've ever done a French press with a dumbbell, at the gym, then you'll know what I'm talking about. That's the kind of movement we're after. If you haven't, you'll not have a clue what I'm talking about. And a nice straight line. You're not looking for that elbow to flare out too much. So I've got a constant pressure here. I'm using the band just to pull against. It's kind of going to reset that shoulder joint, stretch out my tricep as well. Kind of squirming under the tension here. And notice every time I use thick, heavy bands, especially with the shoulders or the arms, it is quite intense, and you'll find you're sort of shaking under the pressure of it. So I need to manipulate my body in order to achieve a nice stretch and to reset that joint. I'm also just internally and externally rotating my hands, or shoulders rather, in that position. Good, bring it back down. Moving on to the right hand. If you take a look at the grip here, my hand goes through the band, goes round the wrist, and then I grab it. Turn and face, get your hand up. And then go about trying to achieve the same tension where you feel like the band is pulling your shoulder into that full flexion, it's pulling your arm past your ear. But notice when you try to compensate for your lack of shoulder internal rotation, for your lack of shoulder flexion. I'm making assumptions here based, you could have the world's best shoulder flexion, but I know a majority of the endurance athletes I know don't, so your body will try to compensate for that by flaring that elbow out to the sides or arching your back. So watch for those two things. I mentioned the grip there just because that is important, because you don't want to be doing too much work with your tricep in order to hold the band in that position. That's why generally I am starting to shake there, because the arm is doing too much work. You want to literally be leaning away from the tension and get that band to pull you or pull the joint into a more favourable position. Last few seconds there, guys. Use your breath before having a little move around and coming back into that original position. How are those shoulders feeling? Let me know. Comment below if this makes a big improvement to any shoulder pain. Actually, if you do have shoulder pain, this is probably not the workout for you. This is more of a preventative one. But if you find this has improved your swim and improved that catch, give me a shout. Let me know. I'll see you tomorrow, guys.